Welcome to our Cleveland Indians season wrap-up roundtable. I'm Zack Meisel, and joining me at the roundtable is nobody. But we have Dennis Manoloff with us on the phone, and if we are fortunate, we will be graced with the presence of the legendary Paul Hoynes. Plenty to talk about. The Indians finished an 85-77 regular season. No playoffs this year. If you ask Kenny Lofton, they didn't make the playoffs last year either. But, D-Man, let's start with this. The Indians went 85-77. They won 92 games the year before, so did they take a step back, or do you look at it more optimistically and say that this was a building block of a year?
No, I think you have to say that they took a step back, Zach. They had fewer victories and did not make the playoffs. Therefore, it is a disappointment. There's no sugarcoating that. This is a result-oriented business. And they failed to deliver the goods this year, despite the winning season and a lot of positives. Ultimately, they fell short of their goal.
When you look at this season and you look at all the difficulties they had with injuries, inconsistency, the high-priced veterans not accomplishing what they're paid to accomplish, are you still at all amazed that they did win 85 games?
Yes, and I can say that without being incongruous from the previous statement. It's not like, just because you're a disappointment doesn't mean you can't be surprised, that they even got to 85 victories, because, yes, there was a lot of things that went wrong. But, a lot of those problems were traceable to their own doing. I mean, when you have players underperforming, that is the fault of the team. Okay, that's not... those aren't aliens that have come down and played for you. Those are your guys underperforming, so you have to take responsibility for them. But yes, given all that went wrong, especially at the beginning of the season in the rotation, especially with the four highest paid players on the team, Swisher, Bourne, Masterson, and Cabrera, I am surprised that they got the 85 victories.
All right, let's bring in Paul Hoynes. Hoynesy, you didn't win belts this season. You didn't do push-ups in the back of the Baltimore press box. You got a few hawk calls, but it was still a memory. When you think back on this season, what stands out to you?
I think, Zach, you got the pitching to me, the starting pitching, the evolution of it, that they went into the end of this season with, you got Kluber, who basically, career year, mid-round draft pick, came out of nowhere. You've got Carrasco, who I was ready to give up for dead. I was digging the grave and then, piling the dirt on him when he moved to the bullpen. Never thought we'd see him again. I thought this guy would be designated for assignment. Just after they put him in the pen, I thought they'd give him a month and then, jettison him. You've got Danny Salazar, who showed some signs of life. After the All-Star break, I still don't understand why they kept sending him down and bringing him up and all that, but he looked very good at the end of at the end of the season. So you've got those guys. You've got 3, 4, 5 group of young starters that probably the most talented guys that I've seen them have since I started covering the club.
So because of the way they ended the season, that rotation, do you consider it, would you go into 2015 with the optimistic view that, hey, we didn't make the playoffs, but we have this to build off of after what they accomplished?
Yeah, I think that's a positive step. I think, as you have written and has been written, that they're still looking to add to that. It'd be probably nice if they could add kind of a veteran guy, a stabilizer, some kind of a guy like that to the rotation. But I think that's a great place to start. I think if you look throughout baseball, you look at the teams that are in the postseason now, what's the thing that drives them? Offense is down throughout the league, but starting pitching is the key. That's pushing the cart right now.
D-Man, in the dark, cold D-Man cave, you charted every single one of Corey Kluber's pitches this year. Hoynesy ranked it as the number 2 pitching performance he's seen in his 500 years on the beat. What do you make of Kluber's season, and is this something, Terry Francona said he's legit, this is not smoke and mirrors. Do you buy that, and can he be the ace of this club for years to come?
Yeah, Yes, he can, as long as he stays healthy, and obviously that's the operative clause with every pitcher. You know, they have to be able to stay healthy, but Kluber absolutely earned what he got. The numbers were eye-popping, and as Terry Francona said, and as Hoynes written and Meisel has mused, it was power stuff. I mean, you know, this was not, he wasn't trying to trick anybody. Yes, there were, you know, good patterns involved and good sequencing by him and Gomes to try to keep batters off balance, but ultimately you're throwing legitimate stuff at these guys, and they know they know what he has. They just couldn't hit it, especially the slurve and the cutter. But yeah, it was fun to watch all season. This guy, you know, he showed signs last year, but I don't think anybody foresaw quite the season that he put together this year. It was definitely enjoyable to watch and to chart.
And then Hoynesy, on the other side, you have Michael Brantley, who the Indians signed to a 4-year extension for about $25 million before the season, and then he turns in an all-star campaign, 20 homers, hits .327. What do you make of his season, and is that the guy you build your offense around in the future?
You know, the thing with Brantley that we didn't know coming into the year, would he hit for power? And he did hit for power. Trailed off a little bit at the end of the year, but definitely an MVP caliber season. I had a vote. I voted for him number 3 as an MVP guy out of 10 guys. You know, do you build around him? I think you can, but I like more you supplement him. You've got to. This offense needs help. Now, I don't think you're going to go out and get a Nelson Cruz. You had that opportunity last spring. It was strictly a hands-off policy, you know, with the Indians. So I don't think they go out and get a 40 home run guy. I don't think there's that many guys out there now with, you know, steroids and stimulants and all the testing. You know, everything's off the board now. I think you'll probably see them try to do what they did last winter, a David Murphy type guy. Hopefully, David Murphy, you would get a David Murphy that gives you a little more consistent production. But I think that's the way they're going to try to improve this offense. And you know, obviously, they're going to say, you know, Bourne is going to come back, Swisher is going to come back, and Kipnis is going to come back. But Brantley definitely MVP type season, a season where, you know, he put the cherry on top of the cake right there.
So, D-Man, you have these historical seasons from Corey Kluber and Michael Brantley, and they're kind of wasted. I mean, we know what happened. We know that they had injuries. We know that Nick Swisher and Michael Bourne and Jason Kipnis had down years. What could they have done differently, the Indians, either the front office, the manager, whoever, to take advantage of these seasons that Kluber and Brantley turned in?
You know, I felt like they didn't do enough in the off season to capitalize and build on a 92 victory year and a wild card appearance of 2013. And I'm not just saying that now. I said that in the spring. I wish they would have added more than, I think their biggest additions, at least the ones they were counting on, were Murphy and Axford. That still wasn't enough to me. You had an inconsistent offense that needed more of a boost. I do recognize they had contractual obligations to the likes of Swisher and Bourne, so you couldn't just get rid of them. But they needed more on offense. They didn't get it. And then at the trade deadlines, I felt like this team was close enough, and it was in the mix. Yeah, it was flawed, and you know, you didn't see a World Series champ necessarily, but I felt like they were good enough that you should have tried to supplement and augment what they had at the July 31st and August 31st deadline. Now, of course, they'll say they tried, but in my mind, they had to do something more than what they did, which was basically nothing. I mean, the biggest additions they made were subtractions, Cabrera and Masterson. So that was where I felt like the front office failed to give Francona the groceries that he needed.
So we saw Terry Francona had to use Chris Dickerson at some points, J.B. Shuck, Chris Jimenez. Terry Francona won Manager of the Year in 2013, but could you make the argument that he did an even better job or did more with less this year?
I think you can. Zach. You know, just the way he kept this team in contention with his handling of the bullpen, and I thought it was masterful. Just the way he did that this year, I thought that was key. I thought he settled. He put Brantley in the number 3 spot and left him there. Stayed with Kipnis a long time. Kipnis didn't come around, but I think that's the kind of manager he is. I think he stayed with Gomes. Gomes had a really big year for him. Finally moved him up in the middle, late in the year in the middle of the order. But to me, the pitching staff, that's where he made, that's where he made his money. That's where he really showed what a veteran manager can do as a good feel for relievers.
With Kipnis,
Dimas, let me jump in with one thing here. And when I talk about the disappointment, don't get me wrong. I'm impressed by the fact that they did win 85 games, given what went wrong. And again, regarding Francona, imagine you tell another manager in the league that his 4 highest paid players are essentially going to go south on him, all right, and give him next to nothing in terms of production and get hurt, and then eventually 2 of them get traded. Ask another manager to try to keep his team into contention into the final week of the season when his 4 highest paid players are not very good.
Is Jason Kipnis' career at a crossroads? I mean, after the year he got the big contract. He really has had one excellent month in his career. Yeah. He's had a few decent months, and other than that, it's been kind of lacking.
I think you see this in a lot of young players. I really do. I think you see some guys that have early success, and then they kind of they think they got this thing figured out. Then the hammer drops on them. They get hurt. They get injured. They find out that the game isn't as easy as they think it is. And then you see, we saw with Manny Ramirez a long time ago. Manny came to spring training overweight. Took him a while to get back in shape, and he never made that mistake again. I think you'll see that from Jason. I think he's too good of a player not to regress here. To regress, I think he's going to, the light bulb went on. I think you're going to see a different guy next year. And he doesn't have to be great. He doesn't have to hit 25 home runs. He just has to do what he did last year. I mean, hit 16 to 18 home runs, steal 30 to 40 bases, hit 270 to 290, and play a decent second base. I mean, that's asking a lot. I mean, not a lot of guys do that, but he can do that. I mean, he's 27, 28 years old. He's certainly not that old. I mean, they've committed a lot of money to him. The Indians don't do that. They throw nickels around like they're manhole covers. So this is an organization that obviously did some research on this guy. I think he'll come back. I really do.
T-Man, Nick Swisher will have 2 fresh, healthy knees next year, but will he have a bat?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know Z, and I don't know Hoynes. I mean, Nick Swisher, he's obviously different than Kipnis in several areas, beginning and ending with age, okay? It's not going to be easy for Nick Swisher to suddenly become a decent player again. I know that he's not 48 years old, but he's into his 30s. He's got 2 knees that he has to recover from, and honestly, I'm sure the knees bothered him last year, but when I saw him and a couple of scouts I talked to over the course of the year saw him, they weren't mentioning his knees. They were talking about the bat speed and the pitch recognition and how it was so poor, and you could get him out. Once you got him to 2 strikes, it was over, except for that AB against the Angels. So I think the odds are long for Nick Swisher to rebound, and you're not even talking about trying to give you a 325, 100 season. You're talking about something in the 260s with 20 bombs and maybe 75 ribbies, and you'd be overjoyed. But I still think it's going to take work for Nick Swisher to get there.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Zach. But I think a guy, you're hitting on 2 bad knees, your knees, your legs, that's the base to any hitter. And if their knees are barking, and he said they started hurting the last day of spring training, I think if he does a lot of work this winter, if he comes to camp ready, and he's going to have to, I think you're going to see a better Nick Swisher. Now, I don't know. He looked to me like he had aged, he'd gone from 33 to 43 in about 2 months. Even defensively, that's the thing that concerned me the most. I mean, there were throws across the infield that hit him in the glove and it dropped. I don't know how bad your bad knees affect your glove. So I don't know how much pain he was in, but hitting wise, I think he'll be a better hitter as long as his knees stay strong.
Yeah, well, the good news is you probably won't have to worry about first base.
Yeah, thankfully. Where do you play this guy, Zach?
Well,
that's the thing.
That's the other thing is if you have David Murphy in right field, Carlos Santana at first base, if Swisher's your everyday DH, you don't really have flexibility to go out and add anybody.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, when you say, it's easy for us to sit here and say, they've got to go get a bat, but where do you put the bat? And who do you move to add the bat? I mean, I guess you can move Murphy. That seems to be a reasonable contract, but Bourne and Swisher aren't going anywhere. Who's going to take those two guys? I mean, if Bourne isn't running, you might as well have Tyler Holt playing center field for you. You're going to get more. You're going to get the same kind of offensive player, and you're going to get speed on the bases, or at least a stolen base threat.
So baseball needs an amnesty clause where you can take a bad contract and just say, get a do-over.
Or you got to have or the Yankees have to have the bad contract, and then they just flush it.
So D-Man, when you're looking ahead of the offseason, the Indians have said...
Hey, wait, hold on, Zach. Alex Rodriguez is out there probably. I'm sure the Yankees would love to trade him something.
Please, no. No, we're not bringing A-Rod here.
It would be, you could buy low on him and...
Oh, God, no.
And let me say one other thing. The concern with Swisher, and I agree with Hoynes, I'm sure the knees factored into his problem at the plate. But, the next question you have to ask is, what's the next injury around the corner? I mean, he had the shoulder 2 years ago, and he had the knees this year. What's next? I think that's a legitimate concern.
Right, and I think the biggest problem here is maybe you could have had the foresight to realize this, but you signed Bourne and Swisher. They weren't young when you signed them.
No.
You had to know that they were going to have some kind of injury problems, break down a little bit, and they're only getting older. So it's going to become more of a problem.
And the thing, I can see what, the whole thinking behind signing Bourne and Swisher when they did it was they're trying to get a jump on the TV money was coming in 2014. The Indians were spending ahead, figuring if they waited to 2014, everyone's going to have the same amount of money. They're going to be starting. They're still going to be the low man on the totem pole. So let's strike early, get two guys that have kind of really strong track records, that have haven't missed a beat for 8-10 years. And okay, let's take a shot. This is our shot. They took it, and they've got nothing in return. It's crazy.
So D-Man, when you look ahead to the offseason, the Indians have said they would like to add to their pitching staff. They certainly need a bat or two or three or four or five. What would be your plan of attack if you're Chris Antonetti?
Well, I totally agree with Paul. I mean, it's so easy to say add a bat, add two bats, but realistically, the way this team is set up with its contract, it's going to be difficult. The spots where you think you can add, there are guys who are occupying those spots with, either club-friendly contracts who are productive, such as Santana, or non-club-friendly contracts who aren't productive, such as Swisher and Bourne. I mean, maybe there's an opening at third base, but I don't think that I don't think they're going to give up on Chisenhall at this point. I think they put in too much time with him to have another team reap the full benefits. They're just starting to see him come around, and he's still young. And then that would leave only right field. But it's going to point it out, Murphy's on the hook for $6 million. You've still got, I think, Rayburn coming back next year on some guaranteed money. So it's going to be hard to add a bat. So my strategy would be the starting rotation. I would look for a legit veteran, a guy who's got innings and wins under his belt and a solid ERA. A guy who gets relatively deep into games. I know those are going to be hard to find too, because everybody wants pitching. But I think the easier add for this club to make itself better is in the rotation rather than in the lineup.
I will say they are in good position to make a trade if they can unload some contract. You've got Bradley Zimmer, who you drafted, an outfielder in the first round last year, Clint Frazier the year before, Tyler Naquin the year before that. you have depth, you have pieces you can move.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, that's an interesting point, Zach. They do have some people they can move. You know, with them, it's about run scoring and run prevention. And just when they're really a good sleight of hand team. When you think they should go one way, they usually go the other.
All right, D-Man, when you look back at the season, what's one memory, one play, one game that sticks in your mind?
The first thing I think of is the triple play in Los Angeles. Just ridiculous play. They go the 7-2-4 triple play, and the guys they got out on that play. You know, the Brantley makes the catch to get Adrian Gonzalez out, who I believe led the majors in RBIs, or he might have been second or something in that. And then Brantley throws out D. Gordon, who's one of the fastest men on the planet, at the plate. And then Gomes throws out Yasiel Puig at second base. And Puig is obviously Puig. I mean, he didn't have as great a year as he'd like, but he's a huge name. And then obviously it had to survive 2 replays. So that play jumps in my mind. And then the visual that I will take from this season, without question, is the first pitch that Corey Kluber threw to Miguel Cabrera in 2014 when he backed him off the plate with the heater. And Cabrera did not like it one bit. And then Kluber proceeded to get 3 swinging strikes on a couple of slurves and a cutter, I believe, or it was all 3 slurves. But in any event, after the 3rd strike, Cabrera had a few choice words for Kluber and could be picked up easily without a lip reader swearing at him, and Kluber's walking off the mound, not even looking at him. That was that's the visual to me of the entire season.
Hoynes?
My favorite moment was the look on Kluber's face when Rayburn spiked the ball in left field in Kansas City.
I was scared for my life, and I wasn't even on the field. That was mine too. And the tie would be the Jumbo Diaz ball from the ball.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was the best.
2 baseballs on the field at once, and I don't think anyone in the ballpark knew what was going on. All right. It was a memorable season. It was a weird one. I don't know where this would rank on your...
Oh, this is a fun year, you know. This is anytime they win, it's usually, you know, something has gone right, something has been enjoyable about the ball club. So this was a good year.
And it'll be an interesting winter. So for Dennis Manoloff and Paul Hoynes, I'm Zack Meisel for cleveland.com. Thanks for watching.